In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the iconic dinner scene actually took an entire day to film. That dreadful day of filming was all thanks to the Grandpa Sawyer actor John Duggan. After finding out how grueling the process of applying the makeup was, he refused to do it again. So the cast and crew had no choice but to finish the entire scene in that same day. Thanks to the Texas heat wave and the lack of air conditioning on the set, the smell of rotting food and body odor in the Sawyer family dining room got so disgustingly repugnant that the cast and crew would take turns running to the window to vomit and to catch a bit of fresh air. Today we're looking at the NECA Retro Cloth Leatherface, and this is the Pretty Woman version of Leatherface. So first off, looking at the packaging, we have some awesome artwork right here that comes with every single Retro Cloth figure, so that's awesome. We have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre logo, we have the Real Toys logo, the NECA logo, and this figure is for ages 17 and up. So we'll look at the back part of the package once we get the plastic off. So let's rev up our chainsaws and get this thing opened. So looking at the back of the packaging, it says the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we have a picture of our Leatherface figure, and he's in front of an actual scene from the movie, and it's one of the final scenes in the film. Looking closer, you could tell that they used a real dirt and rocky road for the floor, and then they used some Photoshop to blend the actual floor with the actual scene from the film. And taking a quick closer look, you could even see that they posed his tie to the right side of his body, just like the promotional image from the film. So the read up on the back says, "This is a tragic tale of 5 young friends who venture into rural Texas one hot afternoon and become victims in one of the most bizarre and brutal crimes in Travis County history. Many of them meet a horrific end at the hands of the murderous lunatic Leatherface in what comes to be known as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre." So looking at the artwork without the plastic and the figure in the way, mostly this part's the part that gets covered up, but we could see all the hooks, all the blood splatter. Looking closer, we could see some bones, some skulls. Well, there's only really one skull, and this skull up here that's part of the skeleton. We have other little tiny details. We see a door, the wood. We see another door. We see all the chicken feathers that you would remember clearly from the film. We have this blood splattered metal tub. And looking at Leatherface himself, you could see all the little wrinkles in his suit. You could see all his nasty makeup smeared over his leathery face. Or it's not even his face, his stolen face. All of that hair. You see the string he's pulling from his chainsaw and an excessive amount of smoke. You see all the rust, or the scratches I mean, of the chainsaw. You see the blades, the chain, and you could also see the name of the artist right there. So yeah, I really love this artwork piece, just like every other retro cloth artwork piece, and just like all the other ones, if you just look closely, you find so many little details that you could spend a lot of time admiring. So Leatherface comes with 2 accessories. He has this chainsaw and this mallet, so let's get a quick look at the mallet. So looking at the mallet, we have some silver paint on the metal part. It's very metallic, so it does look very realistic. There's no wash over it, there's no paint on top, so it makes it look like a clean mallet. So it looks fine, it looks very realistic. And we have the brown piece at the top, so we see that it's very realistic in the way that a real hammer or mallet would be, where the wood would consistently go and tip at the top. And the wooden part is sculpted very nicely. We have all the wooden little details here. We see all the little crevices and everything. So it's a very nice detail in the wood. And it's also shaped in a certain way where it's not just a piece of plastic. You see some rounding in the middle. So that's a nice detail. So a common opinion is that these retro cloth figures are cheaply made compared to their Ultimate line of figures. So if we get this mallet that comes with the retro cloth figure and we compare it with the mallet from the Ultimate line, we could see that the actual wooden part from the retro cloth is made way better than the Ultimate one. You could see that the one from the retro cloth actually has wooden details. There's some black paints in there amongst the wood brown paint, while the Ultimate line is just a brown bland piece of plastic. Even the bottom part, not realistic at all. The only difference is that the Ultimate one does have a black brown wash to make it look very dirty, the metal part. So that's the only difference. The metal part of the mallet looks like a new mallet in the retro cloth, while it looks like a used up old wooden mallet in the Ultimate. So looking at the chainsaw, it was a pain to get it into his hand, so I won't be taking it out anymore. But if we look closely at it, it's very nicely detailed. All the sculpting is very accurate to a real chainsaw and the chainsaw that was used in the film. So you see all the handles and the little exhaust part. So the sculpting is very nicely done. We can see the chain here. And then there's some black type of wash over the yellow to make it look like a dirty old chainsaw. So that's also a great detail. The actual silver part for the metal is a bit more dark than what we're used to. I guess the only bad thing, or the only thing that they could have added, is maybe the blades. They could have had each one shaped differently, but whatever, it looks pretty good. So now for the articulation, we won't spend too much time on it since every single retro cloth uses the exact same body mold. But let's check it out really quick. So we have a ball joint on the head. Mine is very loose, so that really sucks, but these retro cloth figures tend to have loose joints. We of course have the usual arm joints. We have the one on the shoulder, the single elbow, and the up and down on the wrist. And it does turn left and right. But since it's holding the chainsaw, it can't really turn. The chainsaw itself, I just want to point out that it does unhook from here. That's how you're able to slide in this part of the hand. And then it unhooks from the bottom, so you're able to hook this other side of the hand. So I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the chainsaw. And once again, the parts that unhook are this top part of the yellow piece, and this handle unhooks from the bottom, as you can see here. So continuing with articulation, there's a bit of movement on the waist. We move the legs forward, we can move them back, and we have the single joint of the ankles up and down. So very simple, just like every other retro cloth figure, nothing new here. So looking at the sculpting, I think the sculpting is incredible. You could see every little piece of flesh. You can see the stitching. You can see his double chin over here. Again, all the stitching, the curves in the skin. Every single crevice, there's not really wrinkles, but you know what I mean. There's like cracks in the skin, dents in the skin, the ear, this nasty part here. The hair is sculpted beautifully too. This is a nice set of hair. In terms of the paint, they added some type of wash over the top part. It's more of a brown paint. There seems to be a couple of mistakes, like you could see here, the flesh color. You could tell that was a mistake. But the thing that was purposely put on was the brown sheen at the top of the black hair to make it stand out a bit. Moving down to the clothing, we have his jacket, his striped shirt, and his tie that he actually wears along with the other costume. And I think this is also the same shirt that he wears with his other costume, which, as you remember, in the beginning of the movie, he's wearing that apron with the blood on it. So I guess the only thing he really changed was he put on a new pair of pants and a blazer, and a new piece of face. Everything else seems to be the same tie and the same shirt, so he's pretty dirty. So looking at his pants, they look like generic black pants, but they did add some brown paint over it. So if you've seen the final scene of the movie, you know that it's a very dusty area. Moving down to the boots, these are very nicely sculpted boots. You could see every single crevice and dent. They look like really old boots, really old cowboy boots. So here we see some more scuffing and denting. And I thought this was actually a piece of detail, but it's actually, I guess, a paint problem. So there's that thing there. And it's also on the other side, so that's why I thought it was a design, but no, it's some paint issues. But besides that, it's pretty great. All the sculpting looks nice. I really love all the denting and the dents, the scuffing. These boots look really lived in. They even put some of the dust paint on the bottom of the left leg, so that's really nice. In terms of the figure standing, mine has no problems at all. He has some really tight ankle joints, so that probably really helps. Some people might have a problem because he is holding a chainsaw, so that adds some plastic to the front of the figure, and that might add some weight enough to topple it over. My Ash figures from Evil Dead that are retro cloth, they have a really hard time standing because the joints are loose from the ankles and the legs aren't even. Like one of them's longer than the other and they're just crooked from the hips, and it's a whole thing. But this figure itself, it's really fine when it comes to standing. But since I have such bad Ash figures, I'm not sure if that problem continues with other retro cloth figures since they all use the same body mold. But yeah, like I said, mine stands perfectly fine. Here's a quick comparison with the NECA Retro Cloth Freddy Krueger and the NECA Retro Cloth Chucky. And the scaling could be a little better, but as long as Leatherface is taller than Freddy Krueger, I'm okay with the scaling overall. Here's another quick comparison with a couple of NECA Retro Cloth Ash figures, and again, the scaling could be a bit better, but as long as Leatherface is taller than Ash, the scaling doesn't bother me too much. So my final thoughts on this figure is that it's pretty great. I only have 2 flaws with it. My first flaw is the articulation, but since all these retro cloth figures use the exact same body mold, it's not a surprise. But I feel like I should point out that my flaw is still that its articulation is pretty bad. And the other flaw I'd say is a chainsaw. It was pretty difficult to get it on, and I've seen other people break their chainsaws trying to have him hold it. But once you get it on there, if you do it slowly and carefully, it fits very well and it's very sturdy. It won't fall off, of course, and it looks amazing. It's just that since he doesn't have a lot of articulation, you can't really have him in different poses. In terms of the positives, the head sculpt is pretty much flawless. The only flaw is the paint itself, but the actual sculpting is amazing. And also the clothing is great. The paint that they added to the pants to make them look dirty, that's pretty great too. Like, that reflects the final scene of the film where he's wearing this suit. And then the boot sculpting is pretty great, the chainsaw. So in terms of sculpting and all the clothing and accessories, it's incredible. But the joints and, you know, the usual retro cloth flaws do bring it down a bit. So if I had to rank all the retro cloth figures, this one would easily be in the top 3 at the moment, depending on where they go with this series in the future. But at the moment, this one is easily in the top 3. So what do you guys think of this figure? Do you have the same flaws as I do, or do you have extra flaws? Do you have any less flaws? Is there something that you like that I didn't mention? Do you have the same usual retro cloth flaws like the loose joints and all that? Let me know in the comments if you want, and most importantly, thanks for watching.